Yesterday, Mayor-elect Eric Adams announced David Banks as the next New York City Schools Chancellor. CBS2 political reporter Marcia Kramer sat down with Banks to talk about his vision for the country's largest school district.
How are you feeling now? I mean, here you are.
Right.
You're poised to take on almost 1 million students.
Sure.
Scary? How do you feel? In your heart?
In my heart, I don't feel scared at all. I feel excited. It's sobering. And I feel ready. And I feel ready because I don't look at just how awesome the system is and how big it is. I come with a core set of values and beliefs. And I come with a level of confidence about my own abilities and an alignment with a mayor who I believe in very much. I never sought to become the chancellor. I was not looking for a job. I was already good. But he thought I was the person that should do this. And so I'm humbled by that. His expression of confidence in me, number one. But number two, I believe so deeply in the system, the young people in our system. And I just want to, I've been anxious to just get at it and try to do the things that I know we need to do to change it. I've been listening to kids and parents, families for a long, long time. And I want to start that process.
So the big issue is this. As both you and Eric said yesterday, 65% of black and brown students do not reach proficiency ever.
Right.
So what's the plan?
The plan is to provide the early investment in early childhood education and to change the way in which we're even engaging young people from the very beginning. You know, 25 years ago or so, Marcia, we kind of changed the way we approach even the teaching of reading in our schools. We went to kind of this thing called balanced literacy. Balanced literacy has not worked for black and brown children.
So what do you want to do?
We're going to go back to a phonetic approach to teaching. We're going to ensure that our kids can read by the 3rd grade.
So you are going to totally revamp how you teach kids how to read and write.
Absolutely. And that's been a huge part of the dysfunction and why our kids have been set behind from the very beginning. The very framework and foundation. When you heard me say yesterday that it's a systematically flawed system that our kids are in, it's nothing wrong with the kids. There's nothing wrong with the teachers. But the directives, they're teaching wrong. They're teaching wrong from the very beginning. If you go and talk to 3rd grade teachers, 2nd grade teachers, 1st grade teachers, they will tell you their ability to actually teach kids how to read is very, very limited.
So do you have to reorient teachers and reteach teachers how to teach reading?
Yes, we will. And we're going to have to work also with the colleges of education who are preparing our teachers to come in to the system. So it's going to go all the way through so that we're making sure. But that's just that's the foundational kind of stuff.
Back to the future.
It's back to the future. That's right. I mean, because you have to imagine when you look back on how you learned how to read. I learned how to read. It was a very solid phonetic foundation. Yes. You may have come from a poor community, household that didn't have all the resources, but you learned how to read. Our kids today are not even learning how to read properly. So everything that we do after that are making investments in how to catch kids back up because we've set them from behind from the very beginning. This is what Mayor-elect Adams always talks about when he says the upstream and the downstream. Spend a lot of money downstream, but nobody goes upstream to get it right in the first place.
Early kids how to read.
Right.
What about the people who are in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and graduating?
We're going to provide bold futures for them. We're going to provide a different experience for them in the school system, much more project-based learning, where kids actually have a chance to do real stuff. We take them all too often through a process of just everyday schooling that they don't even know what it means. Marcia, you could go and sit in a lot of public school classrooms across New York City, and you saddle up right next to a student and say to them, what are you working on? They're like, I don't know, I'm just doing my work. And think about, what does that mean? Doing my work means I'm just being compliant because the teacher said we're supposed to do this. I have no idea what it means. I don't know what it connects to. When I was a principal in my early years, we had a huge cigarette advertisement across the street from our school. And the kids came to me and said, that doesn't seem right. Why do we have a cigarette? It's like it's encouraging us to smoke. And we stopped everything that we were doing, and we did a whole approach to that. We found out that the city council proposed legislation banning the use of cigarette advertisements within 5,000 feet of schools. We had the kids writing letters to the mayor. It was Giuliani at the time. We were finding out that the kids were studying the harmful effects of nicotine on the body. One class after another, math classes were measuring how far we were across to the cigarette advertisement. We put it all together. We wrote letters to the mayor. He got in touch with us and said, we were so moved that all the kids would engage in this, and we're going to sign this legislation. And we brought 25 kids to City Hall to the Blue Room for the bill signing, and then a month later they came and took that advertisement down. Don't you know how empowered those kids felt by doing that? That's real stuff. And if kids were doing work like that every day in school, they'd be so excited. They would be engaged. We're not creating curricular experiences, civic engagement, the teaching of history. Kids need to understand who they are. That's why I talked about Miss Mildred Scott, my teacher in the 4th grade, and how much she meant to me. When you put kids in the middle of those kinds of experiences, it changes how they see school and how they experience school.
Here's the question, the $64,000 question. Everybody that I talk to says that the classes are too big. Class size matters. Are you going to be able to do anything to reduce the size of the classes? Because don't you think that will make it easier for people to learn?
Small class size works for everybody. I think everybody recognizes that, right? But it's a complex issue, and it's complex because it's very costly to do it everywhere. Literally, you're talking about an investment of billions of dollars.
Can you do it some places?
You can do it some places.
Do you want to do it?
My inclination was certainly going to work very closely with Mayor-elect Adams around this issue because it's a serious issue. But we're absolutely going to look at ways in which we can do that, and certainly in the most challenging areas, the areas where the overcrowding is most severe, where kids are being impacted the most. So absolutely, it's all on the table. We're going to be looking at it, not committing to anything today. But what I am saying is that as we get in there, we're going to review all of these issues, and we're going to look at it very closely.
Right now, the average class size in New York City is 30.
Right.
If you look around the state, it's 22.
Right.
That makes a big difference.
It makes a huge difference, right? But also what sits at the top of that also are quality teachers. And a lot of research that says that if you had the choice between the two, you choose the quality teacher with more kids in the classroom, because if the kids have a mediocre teacher and a smaller classroom, it doesn't necessarily move the needle that much either.
How do you do that? Not everybody's a quality teacher.
Right. Well, there's a lot that we have to do. We got to work to improve our teachers and their skills and abilities. And one of the ways in which I intend to do that, because I get asked a question all the time about charter schools and the like, we want to, as the mayor-elect said yesterday, we want to scale up excellence. Schools work in silos, Marcia, and we've got to figure out how to expand that. So when you've got great teaching that's taking place at one school, I want other teachers from other schools to be exposed to that great teacher as well, so that they can improve their own capacity to be good. It's not enough to just criticize the teachers and say they're not good and we're not making it happen. We can help make them better. I believe that.
What's the average class size of the Eagle Academy?
It's about 28 to 30. Oh, yeah. We don't have small class sizes. Our class sizes are the same. We're traditional public schools. We face the same issues that everybody else faces.
I mean, do you think it would make a difference in some of these really difficult neighborhoods to have smaller classes so the kids could have more individualized attention?
Smaller class sizes for more individual attention is important, and we're absolutely going to look at that and try to do the best that we can. But I will tell you, what trumps that are the experiences that the kids have in their classes. Because even if you have small class sizes, if they're still doing the regular routine, of school and not engaged in really, exciting experiences, you'll get the same results with just a less amount of kids in the class.
So there's $38 billion in the budget. You're going to get a whole lot more from the feds and a whole lot more from the CFE money.
Sure.
Are we spending our money wisely? And if not, how are you going to figure it out?
Yeah, well, listen, this is all the stuff that we're going to take a look at, right? One of the things that you heard me talk about is we spend a lot of money on a top-heavy bureaucracy, and that has to change. When you talk to principals, as I have, when you talk to families, as I have, when you talk to thousands of teachers, as I have, and I have experience, what they will tell you overwhelmingly is we can figure these things out in our schools. We know what our kids need. We have a Department of Education that sits on top of us, and it stifles creativity.
Why aren't the kids getting what they need?
Because I think what it starts with is the vision of what sits at the top. And you have too many bureaucrats who get in the way of schools. They give out directives every day, all day long. And so instead of our schools and our educators really being focused on what they need to be, they're spending most of their day really responding to bureaucratic madness. I intend to free up our teachers and our principals. And the ones who've been successful across our system, they're successful in spite of the Department of Education, not because of them. And so we want to figure out how to trim down that bureaucracy and how to incentivize innovation and creativity. And you do that from the bottom up. I'm committed to that. That's the reason why I was a successful principal.
But how are you going to get those people at the bottom, the teachers, to to funnel their ideas to you when there are so many people above them
Sure.
and they don't know how to even get it to you?
We're going to reduce the amount of people above them. First, we're going to invest a lot.
At the end of 1 year, are there going to be empty offices at Tweed?
I'm saying there are going to be empty offices at Tweed, but there will be reduced offices at Tweed. That I will tell you. And that doesn't mean that we're firing people. What I'm saying is that we've got lots of people who are working in central offices. That's not where the action is. The action is in schools. And so I'm looking to put more dollars into the schools. There's no way that we should be able to say at school, we can say, we don't have money for a library, and yet I've got thousands of employees who are working at the Chancellor's office. That doesn't make sense to me. All the schools need to have what they need. They need to have the funding for after-school programs. So for a longer school year, the mayor-elect has been talking about that. That doesn't always mean the teachers will have to work a longer school year. We want to get community-based organizations from our neighborhoods who've been doing this. We want to get them involved. We want to get corporations involved. So, that's going to be a North Star for us, really creating opportunities for career and technical education, career pathways. Kids need to understand why they go to school in the first place. And if you provide those kinds of incentives, you'll see a reimagined school experience. That's what I'm going to be committed to doing.
So what's your most radical idea that you want to impose?
The most radical is, I think, I would say is the North Star. I want every parent who sends their child to school to know that when they come out, our goal is to guarantee that those young people are going to be on the pathway to a career. That they're going to, whether they decide to go to college or they don't go to college, that they're going to come out with the skills that they need to be able to immediately step into the workforce.
So look into your crystal ball.
Sure.
So right now, 65% of black and brown students do not achieve proficiency when they graduate from our schools.
Right.
At the end of your 4 years, what's the percentage going to be?
Oh, I couldn't tell you what the percentage is going to be, but we intend to greatly reduce that number. We intend to bring a level of hope back to our kids so that they understand why they need to be engaged. So many of them disconnect and disengage from schools because, quite frankly, for them, school is boring. They don't understand what all of this leads to. I want to help them to understand the power of possibility for themselves. And in order to do that, that's not going to be just me. We've got to invoke the village. That's why when you saw yesterday when Mayor-elect Adams made the appointment, it was the village that was there. I went to PS 161. I was raised by the village, and I want the village to be invoked. The village are the organizations that have been out here doing this work. The village is corporate America, who's going to provide more opportunities for our kids so there's not a disconnect between workforce and schools. We need to bridge that gap. The village are the parents and their families all working together. That's what I want to build, and so that we can, continue to do that work.
So step one is teaching people to read differently.
Absolutely.
Revamping reading.
Yes.
What's step two?
The teaching of reading, and step two is really building broad and bold futures for young people. I want to see, you're going to begin to see sooner rather than later, students that are in our high schools in particular, a reimagined high school experience. You're going to see kids going to work at Google and Microsoft. Certainly want to continue to expand on more smaller schools. Smaller schools work, I know that. Traditional schools, charter schools, we're going to figure out how we work together and how we learn from one another.
So how do you make up for the lost year of COVID?
It's hard. It's going to be hard, but we're going to engage again. That's where you have to engage the community. We're going to find.
We're talking about Saturday classes.
Absolutely, all of that. Yeah.
So tell me what are the
tutors.
kinds of tell me the steps you're thinking of. I mean, we're talking about longer school day, shorter school day, longer school year, Saturday classes. You tell me.
Well, so in order to help catch our kids up, they've lost so much during this COVID experience. They really have, particularly from an academic standpoint. And so that's why we're going to be putting investments in with this funding that we're getting into a longer school day, into having our kids engaged in the summers, in Saturdays. It's one of the successful things that we've done at Eagle Academy. Our kids come to school very often, even on Saturdays, to do a whole host of things.
I had to do that.
Right? And so we want to be able to do all that. But we also want to get our local colleges and universities to be engaged. We want those older students to come back and tutor and mentor our students to try to catch them up. And our classroom teachers, we don't want to spend a lot of time on remedial work. We still have to make sure that we're accelerating the learning. We don't just slow it down. We've got to continue to raise a high bar. So it's going to be all of these things working at the same time.
So I know that before you took this job, you talked to a lot of people in the education world because they talked to me. Mm-hmm. So I know that you've been having a lot of conversations.
Sure.
So as you look at the system and as you tried to get your hands around the system, what do you see are the 3 or 4 biggest hurdles that you have to deal with?
We're going to scale and sustain and restore what works. That's first of all. Recognizing that there are great things that are already happening in our system that people just don't know anything about. And so I want to lift those up. I want to celebrate those. And because when you do that, it does two things. One, it tells the parents and our families and the communities that there are great things that are going on in our schools. They need to know that. Because when they don't hear that, they think that there's nothing good that's going on. So we want to make sure that we promote that. We're going to change the narrative around public schools so that people understand there are positive, wonderful things that are taking place. The second reason for doing that is because we want the other schools to recognize the great things that are going on at other people's schools. Because when they know that, they can grow as well. They get better. The whole goal is so that everybody can win. We've had a system for a long time that generates winners and losers. And we celebrate the schools that get good scores, and then we talk about really badly about the school around the corner that can't get it done. I believe they can all win, but we've all got to work together.
So you're going to get rid of remedial schools?
There's going to be a process by which we work to help every school to get better, and that's what we're going to be committed to.
So you know what the big issue for most people in New York City is: gifted and talented. What are you going to do?
We're going to look at that, number one, and I think the mayor-elect has been very clear that we intend to expand gifted and talented opportunities. We intend to expand on specialized schools. We don't want to do less of. We want to do more of them. The reason why you continue to see parents at each other's throats and people in these high-pitched issues is because we have such a limited number of seats for high-quality programs.
So why not expand it?
And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to expand them. We're not going to get rid of them. We're going to expand them. I'm going to look to put gifted and talented programs in school districts all across New York City. And that's part of the reason why we're going to reduce the overall bureaucracy of the DOE. Because we spend hundreds of millions of dollars to fund bureaucrats, and then we tell everybody we don't have enough money to expand gifted and talented. So you see what I mean? That's the goal. We've been wasting our dollars. We've been spending it in places where it's not needed. Teaching and learning takes place inside of schools, and that will be the epicenter of what we do. Parents don't send their kids to a district. They send them to a school. And if we improve every single school, we will have parents who will trust and believe in our schools again. We will have a corporate community which says, thank you very much. You're producing young people who can take jobs in the 21st century economy. That's what we're trying to do, and we've just got to re-engineer what we're doing now in order to make it all happen.
So you said that that the Department of Education is not spending its money wisely. What are the areas where it's not spending its money wisely that you feel that you can take to generate the kinds of programs you're looking to do?
Well, central bureaucracy is certainly one of them. But we're going to be doing a deeper agency review across the system. I'm not there yet. So once I get there and I get a better handle on the budget and on the spending and where a lot of these dollars are going, I'll be able to get back to you a little bit more with more specifics around that.
So one of the big issues that we've been looking at the last few since the pandemic has been the increase in weapons and in schools. I mean, I did a story last Friday where in one school they found in 2 days 38 weapons and guns.
Law and Justice in Brooklyn.
Right. Yeah. And so the question is what to do about that, number one, but number two, the idea of what should school safety officers be doing? Should school safety officers be moved from the NYPD to DOE, or is it better for the NYPD to handle it?
Well, listen, first of all, on the first point, we have seen a significant increase in students bringing weapons to schools.
Why is that?
Because they're afraid of what's happening before school and after school. They're not afraid of what's going on in school. The proliferation of guns and weapons in the community has grown so significantly. The development and proliferation of gangs that grew in the absence of kids going to school under normal circumstances. During COVID, when all of our kids were home, that was a gap that was missing in their normal process. And what happened was a lot of negative things started to happen, and gangs started to grow, and we started to see what was happening with the police department. Now we see more guns in the community. Kids are carrying weapons to protect themselves from what's happening in the community, not what's happening in their schools.
How do you stop that?
Well, that's more than me. That's going to be, our mayor-elect and how, he reorganizes the New York City Police Department. They're going to have to get the guns off the streets, because when you don't do that, kids are in fear for their own lives. That's why they're bringing weapons. So that's a question really more for the mayor and the next police commissioner.
Security officers should stay under the NYPD,
or
do you want them under your aegis?
You know, I think again, this is where we're working very closely with the mayor-elect, and as he becomes the mayor, we'll be guided by, you know, his decision making on that. I used to be a school safety officer.
That's why I was asking
yes.
the question. I wonder how you personally feel about it.
Yeah. Well, I think what's more important is when I talk to most school safety officers and I ask them, is it better for them to be under the police department or under the Department of Education? Overwhelmingly, they say under the NYPD. Now, and yet they don't see themselves as cops in schools. And a lot of people say, you know, we have cops in schools.
Do you agree with that opinion?
I think I agree with that. And I think the reasons for that are because there's a level of training that they get that I think that has helped to establish them as a real professional organization. If you put it under the Department of Education, yeah, we can get the job done. But we have so many other complex issues that we're dealing with. We've got to figure out how to teach kids how to read. And as the chancellor walking in, I've already got an immense job in front of me. Now, if I have to turn around and also figure out how I'm going to train all the school safety officers across the entire city of New York, can we do it? Sure, if we had to do it. But that certainly would not be the first job that I would want to do when I know I have so many other issues that I have to deal with.
How do you feel about magnetometers in the schools?
You know, listen, I continue to listen and hear from parents and families and from the kids themselves. And so for some of these issues, I'm not going to offer up an opinion right now. I just want to say that it is important for me. I want parents to know and families and teachers to know I'm listening to them. I don't want to come in on, it's not even day one. I don't want to come in and say, I've already formulated all my opinions on all these issues. I'm saying I'm listening to the people who are most affected, and then we'll talk about the position in the coming days.
So we've talked about the fact that there are a lot of weapons in schools, which you agree on.
Sure.
And the numbers on magnetometers are this. It's amazing that I can do this off the top of my head. There are 89 magnetometers that are permanently located. There are 520 high schools. There are 1,600 schools total.
Right.
Do you think there needs to be more magnetometers, or do you feel that more random pop-up searches are the way to go?
We're going to continue to look at that. I don't want to offer up an opinion on that one just yet, right? I do think that our children being safe is the most important issue of the day. And not only being safe, but feeling safe is critically important. And yet you can put magnetometers, you can put all the forms of scanning and everything else in these schools. A lot of kids will tell us they feel dehumanized by a process of going to school every day. Kids across America don't have to go through, you know, scanning every day. It's almost like going to prison every single day. And think about what that impacts.
America don't have all the gangs in New York that New York has.
That's true. I mean, and so we've got to figure out the right balance to ensure their safety, and yet making sure that our kids are safe and feel like they're going to school and not to jail.
How do you feel about mask and vaccine mandates? Listen,
nobody likes to wear masks, right? But if that's what it takes for us to continue to ensure a level of safety, you know, we're going to be guided by what the public health officials tell us. And when they say we can take the mask off, we'll take them off. Nobody wants to wear a mask, but we do it only because we have to. Vaccinations, we do because we have to. Who wants to sit down and continue to get these shots and booster shots? I mean, it's not like it's something that's fun that we look forward to doing, but we do it to ensure a level of safety. So safety is going to be our top priority.
And so one of the things that there's been an ongoing debate with the de Blasio administration has been providing space in public schools for charters. And as you saw, even at PS 161, they have allowed some space for a charter school. They enter through the back door. How do you feel about that? Do you think that you want to increase the amount of people in city schools because you want to teach them differently, or do you think that charters play a role? And how will you feel about allocating space in your school buildings for charters?
Well, you know, currently there's a cap on the expansion of the charters, right? And so this is
try every single year to raise it.
I understand it. I understand, and I get it. And I think the folks who are leading these charter schools are doing it for all the right reasons, and for many of them, they're doing an amazing job, But it's a political question around the expansion. Never easy for schools to share space together. And so we're going to continue to look at that, and where possible, we will do that. But my major goal coming in is around how to help the traditional public schools to get better. The political question about the expansion of the cap is really a question for the mayor. and we're going to work in alignment with him around that issue.
One of the things that I was moved by, I mean, I'm moved by a lot that Eric Adams says, to tell you the truth, but when he talked about some basic things like making sure the kids have eyeglasses,
Right.
making sure that kids have healthy food, testing people to see if they're dyslexic.
That's right.
Those seem like basic things that the school system could do to improve their life, but we've never done them.
We're not teaching kids to read properly. That should be the most basic, fundamental thing about a school. So if you start from there and say, there's so many things that we're not doing well. And so that's what makes this a daunting challenge, because the system is broken in so many ways, Marcia. And so we've got a big job in front of us to try to get this thing right and to provide the right opportunities for our kids.
Do you think that testing everyone to see if they're dyslexic will make a big difference because you'll be able to address the problem early on?
Absolutely. You know, Mayor-elect Adams talks about all the time, when we don't do that and kids either are not diagnosed or misdiagnosed, when you look at the percentage of people who wound up in prison, they were people who were never diagnosed and they had a learning disability. And if it's not diagnosed properly, then you can't put in the proper prescriptions to deal with it. And what do? We just continue to move them through the school system.
So will there be a wholesale testing of kids to see if they have learning disabilities?
That is certainly something that we're working to do. So all the fundamental pieces of what it will take to do that are what we're looking at now. But that is certainly our goal.
Can you do it?
I believe that we can. And, you know, it's a big job, certainly. But we intend to certainly lean in on that.
I have a child with learning disabilities, so I know a lot about it. So my question to you is, once you find a child with learning disabilities, will you change the way they learn? For example, my son profited by something called Orton Gillingham.
Yes.
And I wonder if you've explored those kinds of teaching methods, which is a total change in teaching
That's
in the
right.
classroom for people who have, you know, it's a multisensory approach.
That's right.
Do you envision doing some schools that are dedicated to kids with dyslexia?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to commit to doing that. We're having conversations with people now around the development of schools like that, but not just those schools, but helping ensure that all of our other teachers are also equipped with the strategies to address the learning disability once we are clear about what it is. And so, yeah, this is a whole body of work. And so when people ask us about where you're going to put your funding that you're getting, like these are the areas that it's going to go into, the areas of critical need that must be addressed.
As an educator, a longtime educator, doesn't it make you curious that New York City has never attempted to address kids with those kinds of learning disabilities and developed schools where they could be dealt with?
Listen, I live with a daily outrage about so many of the things that have not been done well. And I'm going to be a chancellor who walks with a daily outrage. When Eric Adams talked about 65% of black and brown children never achieve proficiency in a system that spends $38 billion every year, we spend close to $300,000 per child from kindergarten through the 12th grade. And you think about it, there should be no student who's not proficient with $38 billion every year. We ought to be ashamed. But what I intend to do is to change that. And so I'm going to be engaging with a whole host of individuals, organizations, to change this system.
I mean, I just ask myself, you know, I was lucky that my son went to a school that was for kids with disabilities. So he went from like 2nd to 8th grade with that program.
Yes.
I don't understand why New York City hasn't done this.
There are a lot of things that I don't understand that New York City hasn't done. Yes. So I know, you know, listen, you should talk to the folks who are running the system now, right? I can't explain why so many things that have not been done. Those are for the powers that be and those who've been there. All I'm saying to you is I recognize what some of these issues are, and it's certainly my challenge that sits before me and my determination to go in to begin to change the things that we know are so clearly obvious. Why others have not addressed them, I couldn't tell you that. I can't speak for them. But I tend to speak for myself and to lean into these issues.
And you're telling parents that you're going to change things?
Absolutely. And I want our parents to believe in the leadership that is coming into this system that will work on behalf of their children. They're looking at a chancellor who believes deeply in the promise in the potential of each one of their children. Nothing. Every day that I get up, I'm going to work on behalf of those children because I understand the real gifts that each one of them has. I'm going to do everything I can to help them live up to the promise that they have.
So you're looking at a whole new school system?
Absolutely, we're going to look at a whole new school system. It's good. We can't do it overnight, Marcia, but we need to revamp this in order for it to work for everybody.
So at the end of 4 years, this school system is going to be different?
I certainly hope, and listen, it's going to take even more than 4 years to do all the things that we want to do. It's a huge system, but we're going to certainly, I want to say what it's going to look like exactly at the end of the 4 years, but what I will, people will look back at the end of 4 years and say they have started a significant process of change for New York and brought a level of hope back to the system. That's what I'm committed to.
A revolution?
A revolution? Why not? Thank you, Marcia.